JJ, we got Johnson. We got Johnson at 26. We got Johnson at 26. This is great.
It is Matt, it is Richie. We are hanging out with the Jets Lounge guys. Richie, my man, how's it going?
Matt, this is sick. We're at the Jets Lounge event in Farmingdale. The main event is what it's called. We got the entire Rucker family over there. Jets!
Every single time it gets me. That moment when we traded up to get JJ, it was kind of like everything was starting to happen and you're thinking, can we be competitive? Is this really happening? Do we finally have a great general manager? Is JD the man? The year before was exciting. We got AVT. Things were starting to happen. But man, last year when we traded up and we had the third first-round pick, and we cemented an edge along with a wide receiver and Sauce Gardner. Boy, did that draft come together and make you see the genius of Joe Douglas and what was happening to our organization. Wasn't it great? I could watch it 1,000 times. The Jets Lounge was there. They were together. They were hanging out. They were enjoying it. I was 3,000 miles away, but I was with them right up here and right in here. So with that, let's get started. Let me introduce my co-host. His little girl, just celebrated a birthday. And let me tell you something. If you don't like this dude, if you don't like him, you cannot not love her because she is the cutest little thing to ever walk this planet. But let's introduce her father, Vincenzo.
Jeremy, how's everything? I'm going to go without the headset tonight.
All right. Got frustrated.
Enough.
Right?
I'm ready to roll tonight. I took down notes. I have to come through tonight. I'm very excited about this guest that we're bringing on. I'm excited. I feel a lot better about our offensive line after the performance versus Tampa Bay. I'm sure we're going to talk about that tonight. Feel a little bit better about our backup quarterback situation. It could be better. It's another thing we could touch base on. And yes, thank you. Definitely hit like. And you want to bring him on?
Yeah. Say hello to a couple people of Fungus Among Us. Thank you for reminding everybody to hit the like button. Hank G, good to see you here. We got the Improv Man. That is my brother, actually, in North Carolina. So glad he's watching out there. We got Twisted. That's our boy. He's the one that actually, the guest that's coming on, it all started with Twisted. Twisted had 2 extra tickets, or his son did. He gave me the 2 extra tickets. I gave him out on Twitter. It happened to be the father of our guest, who I'll introduce in a second. So it's amazing how the world works, right? And connects people. Harry W., good to see you, my friends. Great to see you. Hope you're doing well. We got K Yeti here. It's good to see you, brother. Harlan Abraham is in the house. Tony Alexio is here. Everybody's ready for some Sunday night football conversation. And without further ado, I'll introduce our guest. Guys, he has written for Jets Insider for the last 2 years. So unlike the other YouTube content providers, when I say I'm being joined by a Jets Insider, I mean it literally. But more excitedly, our friends at X Factor, Jets X Factor, he writes for them, for their website. You know, all know that I'm a big fan of Jets X Factor. Love Joe Blewett. Happens to be a friend of mine. So I'm always excited to talk to anybody involved with that organization. You know, that whatever you want to call them, they're great. They're awesome. They provide great content. And here's one of the guys that provides that content. I'm going to mispronounce his name, but that's okay. He'll correct me. Please welcome Brandon Pockross. You know what? That was actually a really good. That was really good. Pockross. You know, I'll take it. Okay. Is it Greek?
Welcome to the Jets Lounge, brother.
It's Jewish. So Brandon Pockross. Okay. Yeah. Okay, you're part of the tribe. All right. Hey, Vinny, we outnumber you today.
It is what it is.
Yeah. Going to be no Parmesan today, man. It's going to be pastrami and matzo ball soup. Sorry.
No, there's always room for the parm. Always.
It's good to have you. Look at that. You're going to make us all feel bad about ourselves because we think we're hydrating with our tiny little glasses of water, and you're drinking out of a gallon container.
Hey, always got to stay prepared, right?
Yeah. Believe me, especially on this channel. You never know how long it's going to go. You never know what someone's going to say to get you talking. So, let's see who we got here. Rad from Orlando in the house.
That's my man, Rod Regazzo. Welcome aboard, brother.
Love it. Thanks. Welcome to the channel. This guy hasn't been here forever. What's up, butthole? Hope you're doing well out there in Iowa. He's probably celebrating right now because, you know, instead of them getting some crazy storm weather and being on the news and everything like that, he gets to watch Southern California take a beating. So a lot of people have been reaching out to me, and apparently the storm is not going to hit Sacramento at all. It's heading east. So for anybody wondering, no, I'm in Sacramento. I'm above the storm, and it doesn't look like we're going to have any effects from it. So with that being said, let's talk about Saturday's game. Again, this drives me crazy. So, and I want you guys to react to this. There's a whole portion of Jets fans that think these games matter as far as the result of the game, the score of the game. And there are some Jet fans, it's always on Facebook, just freaking out that Rodgers is no help to the team. We're not getting any better. Zach Wilson's horrible. How is the offense so bad? It's going to be the same old Jets. How do you react to that, Brandon?
Well, the first thing I got to say is, you know, whether it's, and I'm an all New York fan, so whether it's Jets, Mets, Knicks, or even Rangers, the Facebook group chats are always the most unhinged. The Facebook pages are always the most unhinged. For whatever reason, we're not going to dive deep into that, but they always have the most unhinged takes. On a real note, though, the way I've looked at preseason, and this has started over the past few years, is it's about individual performances over the group performance. So it's like, yes, the Jets might not be winning games in the preseason, but you want to see process over results, right? So on the offense, doesn't matter if you're scoring 4 touchdowns, 5 touchdowns, but you want to see that offensive line look good. You want to see the quarterback, specifically in Zach Wilson's case, actually go through his reads and make progressions and not look skittish like he did for the majority of last year. You want to see roster bubble guys like Xavier Gipson or Jason Brownlee stand out and make plays to make a case for why they should be on the 53-man roster. On the defense, you want to see that defensive line play the way it has. You want to see how those potential depth options at linebacker look, because that's an area of the team where those guys, while you may not think it right now, they might be needed during the season. You want to see how the safeties look. So it's not necessarily about the overall team, but it's about the little bits and pieces because, and this is the part that I feel like a lot of people miss, it's not about the end result that's going to matter and affect the Jets, but how these different guys stand out. It wouldn't surprise me if Zaire Barnes makes a big play during the season or has to make a play during the season. It wouldn't surprise me if he makes the team. A guy like Trey Dean comes in a crucial spot and is a part of that Jets defense trying to make a big third down stop. These are the type of things that could happen where if they do make the play, you look back at the preseason and say, hey, this guy did stand out. And he showed what he's able to do in the preseason, and it did carry over.
Yeah, I agree 100% with that. 100%. That's exactly the approach I take when I watch these games, when me and Green Bean do the reaction parties, it's exactly what we talk about. We're the last thing we're thinking about. I mean, maybe at the end, if it's close, we're rooting for anybody in a Jets uniform to win the game. But much more important than that is the individual stories we're looking at, right? That we all have some of us lean different ways. Like, for example, for me yesterday, the biggest thing, the bit that I cared the most about was Becton at right tackle. So obviously, if you watch the game, anybody knows that I'm celebrating right now and I'm super happy. And yesterday was a tremendous win. Although I am worried about the injury to Tippmann, because that's another one of my boys that I've been watching really closely. Vinny, how do you feel about it?
I think Becton really proved his case last night. If he's trying to, crack the starting lineup on the offensive line, specifically at right tackle, I actually took down a few notes as I was watching the game. He played a total of 28 snaps last night. PFF gave him a football grade last night of 85. For those of you that know, that was the highest on the entire team. 76.5 pass blocking, 90 run blocking. He didn't allow a single sack, hit, or hurry to whoever was under center at the time that Becton was on the field. So what does that say to me? I think it's safe to say right now that the two tackles on the offensive line right now have been solidified. Dwayne Brown's only been a left tackle his own, almost 2-decade career in the NFL. And I think Becton is our best option on the right side. As far as the guards go, we know it's going to be Tomlinson and AVT. I think the only question we really have is because, unfortunately, Tippmann did have the injury last night. It doesn't sound like it's going to be something too serious, God forbid. But you always have Connor McGovern in reserve. And the thing I like about some of these guys is that the pieces that Joe Douglas has brought into this team are very, very versatile. Tippmann can be a center or a guard. AVT has played for this team at every single position on the line, with the exception of center. But if he really actually had to step in and play center, I have full confidence he could pull it off. Becton can play either side now. We know he could be a left tackle. He could be a right tackle. So, I mean, again, as far as the offensive line is concerned, I think center is the only question going into week one, depending on who Rodgers feels more comfortable with. Personally, I'll be rooting for Tippmann. You took him at the top of the second round because you believed in the kid. But as far as Becton goes, an absolute hell of a performance last night. I mean, there was one play in particular that's just going viral on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, where one of the pass rushers on Tampa, he tries to come through. He puts him on his ass. He's like, no, you're going to come back for more. And he literally manhandles the guy and puts him on his ass a second time. It's just unbelievable. I mean, he's so dominant. Just a pure, unbelievable performance by Becton. And honestly, I'm rooting for the kid. I really am.
That's great. And not bad for a meatball with legs, right?
Yeah,
I heard that.
I spoke too soon, didn't I?
I heard that comment you made. Brendan, is there any player that stood out for you that got you excited?
I mean, Becton's probably 1A for me. I mean, look, he's getting ramped up, and it makes sense that they're slowly ramping him up, especially with the 2 knee injuries. But we're beyond past the point where he needs to start getting first-team reps. And I think the Jets realize that too. I mean, you watch him on the right side, a position that, he hasn't played a ton of. He was stonewalling people in the passing game. He was an absolute force in the running game. And he just consistently is building up and looking like the player that he was in 2020. And obviously, we don't know 100% yet if that's going to be him during the season, because he hasn't consistently played against starters yet, and he hasn't had that full amount of game reps. But it looks very promising. And quite frankly, Max Mitchell, Billy Turner, it's not getting the job done right now. It's just not. And the Jets have consistently spoke to the fact of, they want to play their best 5. Becton is a part of that best 5. And that's not necessarily just right tackle. Let's say Dwayne Brown, for whatever reason, and we've seen this a lot in the past with the Jets, isn't ready for week 1. Well, worst case scenario, you slide Becton the left tackle, slide AVT the right tackle, and luckily enough, the Jets' depth on the interior, whether it's guard, the left guard, right guard, is stronger than at tackles. You have a guy like Tristan Colon. You can potentially move a guy like Joe Tippmann, if he's healthy, which we're still waiting on, to that guard spot, and still have a guy like McGovern, or vice versa. Move McGovern the guard and put Tippmann at center. Becton being whether it's a right tackle or a left tackle, him just being on that line makes things so much easier for the Jets and makes their line that much better, because not only is it the floor, but it's the upside. You're not getting that upside with Mitchell, and you're not getting that upside with Turner.
I love it. Yeah, no, it makes total sense. I was shocked because I really wasn't watching him yesterday. I wasn't paying attention to him much, but Turner actually had the second highest PFF grade on the offense yesterday. Now, it was a small sample size, and he hasn't exactly earned my complete trust yet, even with that score. But I do want to say, hey, Vinny, how excited are you about when you look at that 90 pass rating for a run block rating for Becton? At the thought of AVT and Becton on the right side for Dalvin Cook, for Breece Hall, for Michael Carter, how's that going to be? We know AVT is an elite run blocking guard, right? Good enough to do it from the tackle position. How do you feel about those two lined up together? And maybe we finally get those Mash brothers that they used to, that we've never gotten to see.
I'm very excited about it. I mean, like I said, we just need the injury bug to just stay away from this team. With one final preseason game to go, as you guys know, it's been announced that Rodgers is going to play in the game. We'll talk about that later on, which I'm totally against. This last game is usually for the back end of the roster, historically, for whoever's trying to make, fourth string, fifth string, what have you. But if you feel comfortable with these two, or who your five guys are going to be, I don't see there's any reason to play in the game, especially with a guy with Becton who's got his knee been surgically repaired twice in the last 2 years. I wouldn't take a chance. If you feel comfortable he's going to be your tackle going forward and you need him to be on that knee for 17 straight games, sit the guy. There's no reason. See what you got in Max Mitchell. See what you got in Turner, or any other piece you have on the offensive line. Because if, God forbid, one of those guys needs to step into duty, they should be ready if their number is called.
Absolutely. How do you? So, Brandon, how do you feel about the entire offensive line as a whole? And one question I'd love to ask you is, what is the drop dead last possible date that you imagine Dwayne Brown could come back to practice and yet be ready for starting, for the starter on 9/11?
So with the offensive line, right, it's very interesting because on the one hand, you want them to mesh together and you want them to really get set. But at the same time, do you really want to risk it, as Vinny said, with Becton out there? Because it's the matter of the risk versus they got to mesh together in live game action. I don't think it's been necessarily as bad all the time, because the nature of training camp practice is that it's not live all the time. Yes, guys get beat, but you don't know what plays are actually sacks. You don't know what plays would actually be dead if tackles get broken, yada, yada, so on and so forth. What you can tell, though, is when guys outright get beat. And that's the other part of it, where it's not as bad, but it still hasn't been good. Like Max Mitchell has consistently got beat. That is translated into the game with the holding penalties and him just not looking great. Billy Turner, while he's gotten beat, hasn't looked as bad in game action. So you have the dichotomy there of, both guys looking not great in practice, but Turner's looked slightly better in game action, while Mitchell has had more of those struggles carry over. And to the Dwayne Brown point, I don't think it's necessarily this week, but I think once you get to that 2-week window, 2 weeks out from, week one, games counting, I feel like you need Brown on the practice field. Not necessarily the ramp up for this preseason game, because you're not playing Dwayne Brown in week 3 of the preseason as his first live game action. Honestly, I'd save him until week 1. He's a veteran. He's done this for a very long time in the NFL. There's no need to risk that. But he needs to practice. He needs to mesh with that offensive line. And let's face it, and this might be the unfortunate reality of the situation, that offensive line might not fully mesh until week 2 or until week 3. Because sometimes the best way for a group of guys that hasn't played together is live game action and actually dealing with the Buffalo Bills pass rush or the Dallas Cowboys pass rush coming after them and actually trying to sack Aaron Rodgers instead of stopping short like it's practice. So there's a lot of different things that go into it, but overall, I'd say I'm not panicked yet, but I do want to start seeing what the unit's going to be like, and I do want them to start working towards that. And I think after this last preseason game, the clock is ticking. It's basically go time.
I love it. I have to say, I have to ask everybody watching, if you need some time, we could take a pause so you can look up the word dichotomy. Just we got to let our listeners catch up a little bit so they know what's going on. But you had me at that moment as a definite Jets insider, an expert, and great writer. But seriously, no, I agree with that. Like I think the one thing about Dwayne Brown and the reason they're not rushing him is because he's such a veteran and he's been in the league so many years. It's just a matter of him getting enough practice to feel comfortable with him in there. And if Laken Tomlinson obviously is there next to him, they were together all last season. So, they know how to work on that side anyway. They're there, and hopefully just, even if they're struggling a little against Buffalo, just the natural ability, like as far as the right side with AVT and Becton, just their strength, their natural power and natural skills are going to be fine for the running game. And really, that's all Aaron Rodgers needs. If we can, establish an efficient and effective running game, that's going to set up play action. That's going to set up what we need for him to, especially a veteran like him that's able to get rid of the ball in 2 to 2.5 seconds, and get us going. And what a lot of people think is, as far as the games are concerned, we haven't seen him out there with Garrett Wilson. We've only seen Zach Wilson, and we haven't seen Garrett Wilson. So another reason nobody should panic based on preseason, because I honestly think it's not going to take Aaron Rodgers that long to find Garrett Wilson when he drops back to pass.
Yeah, 100%. And to the whole thing with Rodgers starting, like I've been torn, because on the one hand, it makes sense to get him live reps, to get him, action, in the sense of you want him not going into the season without playing a game whatsoever. And we also don't know whose decision is. This could be Rodgers pushing for it himself. But on the other hand, we're not 100% sure what offensive linemen are going to be playing in front of him. We're not 100% sure who's healthy enough to even play in the game. We're not sure about the depth guys behind those starters. And at the end of the day, personally, I would feel very concerned about putting Aaron Rodgers, whether it's for a series or two, behind majority backup offensive linemen. And I'm not talking like the Bectons, where I'm talking like the interior guys, like a Tristan Colon and a Wes Schweitzer, in the sense of guys that most likely aren't going to be starting opening day and shouldn't be starting opening day, protecting Rodgers in that last preseason game. But once again, we don't know the full story. We don't know if he pushed for this, if behind the scenes Rodgers like, I want this because I want to get live reps with Garrett Wilson, Lazard, Conklin, and make sure we're all on the same page in a live game setting. We're not 100% sure. And I think as the week goes on, we're going to have a more definitive answer of what that is. But regardless of that, I still don't feel good about it. And personally, I would have been completely okay with the Jets being like, Zach Wilson starting the last game, Aaron Rodgers, you're not seeing him until week 1 of the regular season, and that's that.
Now, Billy SPC comes in. He says, this thing can explode on us. Brown, Becton, AVT would be disastrous if all three were injured. Well, isn't that the truth for any team in the NFL, though? If any NFL team lost their starting left, right tackle, and their best guard and most versatile guard, and their best offensive lineman in general, wouldn't that crush any team? Vinny, what do you have to say to that?
That was our story all of last year. I mean, for God's sake, I mean, we were picking up guys off the street, 4th, 5th, 6th string tackles we were picking up. And some of them were good, and some of them were flat out garbage. Again, there is no reason to play any of these guys in this last game. This last game, historically, like I said earlier, it's meant for the back end of the roster. What I wanted to actually mention is I don't think Douglas is done tweaking the roster in terms of especially the offensive line. After this game is all said and done, and each team has to get down to their 53, there's always those surprise cuts. Now, do premier tackles usually hit the market? Usually not. But some names I could put out there that have been mentioned that are floating. One that might be a possible cutout in Cincinnati. Lyle Collins is a name to keep your eye on. And then some older players that are out there I wouldn't start, but just have as a depth piece. Jason Peters' name is floated out there, Orlando Brown, Eric Fisher. The list goes on, and probably some others we don't even know about. But as far as like our tackle depth, like you mentioned, Brandon, should we trust Max Mitchell and Ryan Turner based on what I've seen? No, I wouldn't.
And maybe as like a depth or a swing tackle, or maybe coming in for a game or two, but over an extended period as a starter, no. And a guy I thought would potentially be a good addition even before this offseason started, a guy like Dalton Reisner, who would add more depth on the interior, maybe even slide him out the tackle in an emergency situation. He's played under Hackett before. Feel like that would be a nice way to shore up more offensive line depth. But I agree with that point in the sense of guys are going to shake free. And we've seen the Jets do this before, where after the cutdowns, they see someone that they like, they claim him off waivers or sign him as a free agent, and that guy ends up playing a role for them. I mean, we saw that with Will Parks when the Jets safeties were absolutely decimated, and they signed Parks. Parks flashed some things, and he stuck around the roster for a little bit. So those types of guys are going to potentially be out there, but you can't bank on it. You have to ensure that you have the best group possible starting right off the bat. And if you get lucky, like a Morgan Moses or a Dwayne Brown, both of which happen in recent off seasons for the Jets, then you bounce on that opportunity and you have that insurance policy. But you can't bank on an insurance policy every single time. You have to make sure that unit is solidified. That goes back to off-season conversations of should they add more to the offensive line, but we're past that. This is the here and now. The Jets have the guys that they have right now. There's most likely not going to be a significant upgrade, and it's going to be very interesting to see how it plays out.
Yeah, I think that when it comes to injuries, you have to hope you stay healthy. There's nothing we can do to control it. I mean, it just is what it is. It's like every team in the NFL. It's just sitting there and being hopeful. Now, the fact that Turner played pretty well yesterday in actual game situation, it gives us something to hold on to, because there's a couple of options at tackle. I mean, if all three get hurt, I mean, that is what it is for any team. But, we have a couple of options. So if a guard was to get injured, we have the McGovern-Tippmann combo, right? So now all of a sudden, whoever isn't the starting center could play guard, and either one could play vice versa. It doesn't even matter. They're playing around with it, but we got a lot of versatility in the internal part of our line. But that also protects us if Becton or Brown goes down. I honestly think before they turn to Turner, they move AVT to the outside. If you're really going to stick to the best five, if that's the true thing, best five, AVT goes out to replace the tackle. McGovern and Tippmann are your guards. That's our best five. I think it's pretty hard to argue, at least in my mind. So, and then you still beyond that have Turner, who has lots of playing experience. And if you look at any team in the NFL, if you go to your third option, like tackle, one gets hurt, you bring in AVT and you rotate the line. And then you lose another tackle and you have to bring in Turner. I think if you look at any team in the NFL, are there that many teams that are going to have a better option than Turner at that point after losing two tackles?
No, because there's not good offensive line depth across the NFL in general.
Mm-hmm.
It's why teams hold on for dear life with their offensive linemen. It's why the majority of really good offensive linemen don't go anywhere for the majority of their careers, because these teams pay them and know the value of them. And look, is Billy Turner the greatest? Is he some amazing tackle? No, but if he plays the way he did in game action, that's a guy that's at least average. And average tackle play, if you get that level of the Billy Turner performance, is better than anything you're going to find on the scrap heap most of the time.
Right. Now, to add on to that, let's go to our fifth option. So we have our option, then the third, then the fourth. Our fifth option is Max Mitchell. Now, look, he's had a horrible camp. I think after watching how he played last year, rookie, wasn't supposed to play. He was a development player, was supposed to add on weight strength and all that. Ends up playing, I don't know if average, maybe a little below average. The point is he overperformed. Now he has this health issue. I think the health issue is impacting him. I think it's impacting his camp. If he could get back to just what he was, I will go as far as saying nobody has a fifth option as good as Max Mitchell the way he played last year if he gets up back on track. And even with him playing poorly, there's no team in the NFL that has a better option if you were to lose three tackles and be five tackles deep. I mean, what team in the NFL is that deep? I mean, you just said it, none.
It's just hard because, at that point, trying to keep all those offensive linemen, right? Number one with Mitchell, I'm in agreement with you. I think he had blood clots, and that's scary. Even when you're recovered from something like that, you might not even be fully recovered. And that's just speculation, but you never know what a guy's truly going through. I mean, the biggest example is the Carl Lawson stuff. We didn't know last year that he was dealing with an injury from training camp on. And you look back, and that could potentially explain some of the struggles he had, even though he had a relatively productive season. So stuff like that doesn't always pop up because these guys are warriors. They're going to fight through stuff that would keep most regular people off a field, out of work, like different stuff along those lines. But to the point with him on the roster, this is where roster construction comes into play, right? Because in a perfect world, you want to keep all your offensive linemen because of how valuable they are. But are you keeping 6 wide receivers? Are you keeping 4 tight ends? Are you keeping 5 linebackers? Like, once you start diving deep into that, and I'm not saying that it's specifically offensive tackle, but let's say in this example it is. Are you keeping a Max Mitchell over a Jason Brownlee or a Gibson? Are you keeping a Max Mitchell over your developmental tight end in Kuntz? Are you keeping him over a Trey Dean? Are you keeping him over a Chaz Surratt, a Zaire Barnes? That's the question to start asking, and that's the most difficult thing because these teams, once you get to the back end of the roster, it becomes overall roster battles, not tackle versus tackle or safety versus safety or wide receiver versus wide receiver. And once this Giants game passes, I'm very, very interested to see how the Jets go about some of their cuts and how they address certain positions and who they try to stash on the practice squad and who might get stolen off that practice squad. That's what I'm most interested to see. And that really pertains to guys like Mitchell and players towards what I would say probably the back end of that roster bubble.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I mean, we all watched Jason Pinnock go to the Giants, and a lot of people weren't happy about it. This year is going to be even more challenging than that. I mean, we might have a few examples of a Jacek Pinnock situation. You mentioned some of the names like Trey Dean, Brownlee. I mean, these guys are having excellent camps. We've got a problem at safety, too many of them. Ashton Davis stepped up yesterday as well. So who do you expose? It's not an easy situation. Vincenzo, we got a super chat from eBoogie. I want to thank eBoogie. I appreciate that. Do you want to respond to it and weigh in on it?
It's something I actually wanted to bring up. So Aaron Rodgers actually threw out a cryptic tweet of hashtagging his former offensive tackle back in Green Bay and David Bakhtiari. Now, whether or not Green Bay would shake him loose, I highly doubt. Their GM has publicly come out and said that Bakhtiari is not going anywhere. But I mean, what if there is a scenario where Green Bay opens up the season, they struggle, let's say they start the season 2-4, 1-5, whatever the situation may be. Jordan Love's having a hard time and he can't protect himself. Do you think they would entertain making another deal with the Jets and bringing in Bakhtiari, who's, mind you, he's had his injury issues? And also, how do you make that trade possible? Because right now, Green Bay has secured our 2nd round pick. And more likely than not, it's going to become a 1st round pick as soon as he hits that 65% mark. So if I'm not mistaken, the way the NFL trade rules go is you can't even trade the other pick until that deal has been satisfied. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. But would you entertain making a play for Bakhtiari before the trade deadline if they were willing to do that?
A lot of times with these types of trades, it's about the assets you're giving up, right? And what level of asset are you comfortable giving up for a Bakhtiari? Because are you willing to dive not into necessarily the 2024, this upcoming NFL draft pick allotment, but next year's, because are the Jets going to want to be without a first, second, let's say a third and a fifth, and basically not pick at all in next year's draft? It's a hard prospect to sell. And is Green Bay going to hold the Jets over the barrel in the sense of they're going to want assets for a guy like Bakhtiari? Like we just said, even an injury-prone offensive tackle has a lot of value. And Bakhtiari, at his peak, has been one of the best offensive tackles in the league. It's back to the Jets' point. Are you going to invest in another older, injury-prone tackle? You already have a guy like Dwayne Brown. And if you invest in a guy like Bakhtiari, yes, very close with Rodgers, yes, would be a good move. What happens if he gets hurt? And let's say you're cutting guy X or guy Y. It all goes into the prospect of making that trade. Personally, for me, at the right price, I'd be very interested. But that's the thing. It's at the right price. And I just feel like the assets could potentially be held for something better. Like, for example, all things being equal at the trade deadline, I'd rather take a swing on a Devontae Adams because I feel like that's more of a realistic option, and I would feel better about investing assets into a guy like Adams than a guy like Bakhtiari. And that's not need specific, but a guy like Bakhtiari right now would be, quote unquote, the best potential offensive tackle to come available. If a guy better than Bakhtiari comes available that makes more sense at the trade deadline, completely different conversation that we're having. If this is a guy that I'd say around like a 28, 29-year-old that's been relatively healthy, I'm pushing the chips to the table and getting that guy because I want to ensure that my O-line's good down the stretch. But that guy doesn't exist right now. The closest thing that you had to that was Zach Martin. He got extended. So It's kind of a guessing game in the sense of who's going to be available. And if X guy is available, what assets do the Jets give up? We don't know for sure, but Bakhtiari, one, seems like more of a pipe dream at this time because, one, I don't think the Packers want to trade him, and two, I don't think the Jets would want to give up the value that the Packers probably have him at. And then number two, overall, I personally wouldn't make a move for yet another tackle that could be on your injured list.
I agree. I agree wholeheartedly. It's just the concern is and keep in mind, we're going for it this year. It's evident they're trying to make a true run at the Super Bowl, which, we haven't done in many years. But the thing is, let's fast forward to the end of the season. Our tackle depth is going to be hit considerably because, honest to God, I don't expect Dwayne Brown on this team next year. They've already informed Mekhi Becton they're not picking up his option. Carter Warren's an unknown. And is Max Mitchell really ready to be projected into the starting lineup? I don't know. I said this on another one of our episodes in the last couple of weeks. Regardless of how this season shakes out, whether we win it all, God willing, or if we end up as the worst team in the NFL, the first selection in our draft next year, whether it's in the first round or second round, you absolutely have to address tackle. You have to.
Well, also with Becton, you could, if he has a great year, franchise tag him, and then you have him under contract and you're trying to work out that type of extension because, look, all things equal, if Becton has a great year, there is literally no way the Jets are letting him walk. They don't have enough on the offensive line to basically be like, yeah, Mekhi had a great year. We're just going to let him walk out for nothing.
Especially with Brown probably retiring.
Most likely, yeah. And then you have, once again, I agree, that tackle depth will 1,000% be addressed, whether in free agency or the draft. But that's probably my priority number one. I know the 2023 season hasn't even started, and we're talking about next offseason. But in all seriousness, I completely agree. Offensive line, even it's crazy that you can see it now that it's going to have to be addressed going forward.
Yep. Yeah.
And the thing is too with Becton is let's say all the stars align and he has a heck of a season, plays every single game. Are you giving him the bag in the offseason? How much are you willing to contribute into this guy? Because again, the knee has been repaired twice. If you're giving him a 2-year deal, 3-year deal, 4-year deal with an option, how much guaranteed money is involved? There's so many question marks.
Well, it would be franchise tag for me. I'm franchising and I hate the franchise tag. I want to get out in front of that. I absolutely hate it because I'm a big proponent of players getting paid because NFL is a extremely tough sport. A guy like Becton represents that. 2 freak knee injuries, and all of a sudden you don't play for 2 years. But from a New York Jets perspective, it makes literally no sense to give a long-term deal after this season for Becton, no matter what happens. And if he has a great year, the way the Jets are going to look at it is, hey, we put the franchise tag on it, and we play it out next season. And if you have yet another year where you stay healthy, you stay consistent, and you're a big part of the O-line, that's when he gets the extension.
Right. And even when you give him the extension, you got to be careful about how much guaranteed money. Part of the decision is he the guy? And I'm not accusing him of anything. It's with every single player. You have to say, is this a guy, if we give a long-term guarantee, is going to have the same work ethic? Or is he going to drift back to, to who he was? Is he going to still come in at 345 to 350 into camp, all pumped up, in great shape, ready to go, even after he secured that long-term deal for millions and millions of dollars? Or is he grown up? Has he changed? Has he transformed? So there has to be a lot of character analysis. You have to ask the guys, the coaches, the staff in the room. There's a lot we're not going to know as fans that are going to create that belief system, because that's such a big part of signing that big contract or offering that guaranteed money. The character is so important, because we've seen so many times players that live up to the contract and players who just go down because that kind of urgency and that hunger is just gone, because you gave them that guaranteed amount, and that's it. They're good.
That's the thing too. It allows you to protect yourself from the player. And the good thing with the franchise tag is, for the player, number one, it's the average of the 3 highest players at the position league wide. And you could take it all the way into the following year, and then you could franchise tag them a second time if need be. But then that would be the end of the road, because as we know, you can't do it 3 times.
Yeah, 100%. And as I think Eddie in the chat said, we saw it with Wilkerson. We've seen it with a guy like Mosley. Like, you have the good, you have the bad. Mosley gets the contract, played extremely well here. Wilkerson gets the contract. He was off the Jets in 2 years into that deal. Like, you have both cases, and that's every sport. You have guys that live up to the contracts. You have guys that get the contract, and then whether it's their production just falls off a cliff, injuries, a mix of both, off the field, like, no matter what it is, and no matter what sport it is, you have to be careful when giving out the contracts. We've gone over the whole Becton thing. Honestly, for me, I'm just looking forward to what he does this year. And I hope he's a huge part of the Jets O-line, and I hope he dominates on the Jets O-line, because he's going to earn himself, whether it's franchise tag or not, a whole lot of money, and he'll deserve it at that point.
So Bernard comes in and says, do you think Rodgers can still run? I just want to say, I don't think, obviously, not that Rodgers was bad at running, but I don't think he was ever a true runner. I think he was always just very athletic and had high football intelligence. And I think while he doesn't obviously have the speed to run for positive yardage, I think what Rodgers has is, with his experience, great pocket awareness. So when you have great pocket awareness, you don't necessarily need to be super fast and athletic. You need to be able to get out and bail on time. And you need to have the experience of knowing when to get rid of the ball, and based on your receivers and what you saw as you took off, is there a chance to make a play here? What's the situation? Who's chasing me? Aaron Rodgers has that kind of ability, that multitask ability of putting all these pieces of information together and instinctually react. So what I think about Rodgers is he could be mobile in the pocket based on his brain and his football IQ more than his athletic ability. So I think you're going to see him getting out of the pocket when there's trouble, but I don't think it's about can he run. I think it's more about his senses, and his football IQ.
I would classify Rodgers as more of a smart runner than like a just runner, in the sense of, and whether it's been in Green Bay or what I think he's going to do this year, he's taken off when either there's just 3 yards in front of him, or the play demands it of him, where no one's open down the field. He can get a few yards, get out of bounds, reset the play, and play smart. Because for a guy to play in the league as long as Rodgers has, not only do you have to be talented, you have to know what you're doing with the ball in every single play. And the dichotomy of that is a guy that we've seen in the past, like Zach Wilson, right? How many times could you count last year where Wilson's dropping back to pass and there's 30 plus yards for a guy that's extremely athletic for him to just take and keep the Jets drive moving, and instead he opts to throw a highly contested pass or a pass that is inaccurate. On the flip side of that, Rodgers, if he sees that, he's taking off because he understands the value of those yards. He understands the value of extending the play and extending the drive. And I think that's the type of runner that he is. I also don't think he's going to need to run that much, and I don't think he's going to want to run that much. Keep in mind, he wants to play for a few more years. Why would he put himself in line to take those type of shots? I don't think he would.
Vin?
I agree wholeheartedly. And if the line is going to be what we expect it to be, there should be no reason for Rodgers to do any running. Historically, he's never been one of those like scrambling quarterbacks. If we can maintain the pocket and keep a nice strong pocket around him, there will be little to no reason for him to run out. I mean, as far as his mobility goes, I mean, one of his strengths is being able to throw on the run and be able to hit his receivers in stride. And the thing with Rodgers is his intelligence is off the chart to know where to put the ball in those small windows when the receiver has to be at a certain point on the field, especially the long ball. I mean, one of the masters that I've ever seen. I've been watching football as far back as I can remember.
Okay. E-Boogie, thank you for this other super chat. I appreciate it. At the trade deadline, who do you guys see the Jets trade away or axe? JFM or Corey Davis? Well, we're certainly not cutting either JFM or Corey Davis. And for what picks and players in both? Well, I'll start by saying I honestly don't see them trading either of them unless I don't. First of all, if I had to pick between the two, I think it would be JFM only, not because of talent. If we had an opportunity to land someone really big, unless it was a wide receiver, I don't see how we can part with Corey Davis. I think we need him more than we need JFM, only because of how loaded the room is. I don't think JD's on the phone looking to trade either of these two guys. I think they're both solid players on our team. They're starters on our team, evidenced by the fact that you've barely seen them in preseason. I don't think you've seen JFM at all. Maybe we saw Davis for one drive last week. So I don't know. I mean, I think if there was the right opportunity, I think we have a GM who picks up the phone, anything to make the team better. But unless it was a wide receiver we were trading for, I think as much as I love JFM, it would be him only because of how deep that room is. But again, I'm probably 98% confident that both JFM and Corey Davis will be on our opening day roster. What do you think, Brandon?
I don't see any way JFM's traded. He's too crucial to their defense, and I don't think the Jets want to touch that defensive line in the sense of that second unit's been dominating the way they have this preseason. We haven't seen JFM, Quinnen, Lawson all on the field together, Clemens. I don't think the Jets even want to mess with that because that has potential to be one of the best defensive line units that we've seen for the Jets and let alone the NFL in the past few years. Corey Davis is the one where I'm like, I don't know, but I could see it. I could see it because it doesn't seem like he's running a ton with the ones. They brought in Lazard. I think Garrett Wilson and Lazard are going to be on the field a lot together. Jets are going to use a lot of tight end personnel. Conklin, Uzama are going to be used a ton in my eyes. They're going to want to run the ball, use a lot of play action. And, I just don't know if Corey Davis right now is going to be anything more than a depth option. I mean, he hasn't been practicing all that much. He's not working in with that number one offense. And having him as a depth option is amazing for the offense. But if you can get a pick for him, if you can get a player swap at a different position for him, is that something the Jets look into? Potentially. But once again, that's something that is going to be answered once we approach cutdowns and once we approach the Jets actually setting their roster for opening night, because we're going to see what they actually think of a guy like Davis, among others.
If they made a move like that, to me, what it would indicate is they like either Gibson or Brownlee or, much more than we know.
Right.
Like,
No,
the belief in
100%.
one of those guys is really, really heavy because wide receivers get hurt, right? So Corey Davis is a key part of that depth piece. But again, that's what I mean. I mean, it would just indicate to me that they have an incredible amount of trust in those young receivers, and there's at least one of them that they would be willing to be put in a situation where they had to throw him on the field when it counts.
And also something, I'm pretty sure something came out today about, the Jets potentially cutting Corey Davis this offseason. And, while I could see the reasoning behind it, Davis isn't contributing much to the offense. He isn't, doing a ton for them right now. I just feel like, number one, you could have restructured him. You didn't. You could have got rid of him earlier in the offseason. You didn't. You could have saved the money on his contract. You probably still can save money on his contract, but
post June 1st cut.
Yeah, but it's just very interesting because there were other receiver options out there. We all know the rumors about Odell Beckham. DeAndre Hopkins was out there. We don't know how invested the Jets were in him, but that's the type of thing where it's like, I don't think they're going to move off Davis unless they get something in return for him. Because if they make a move where they're cutting him without getting anything in return, and Douglas has done a lot of great things in his tenure with the Jets, but he's not perfect. And this would be one of those things where I'd be like, I'm not so sure, because it wouldn't be necessarily about the player himself. It's about value and cap structure and different things where if you were going to go this route with Corey Davis, why didn't you do it sooner?
Yeah,
I agree wholeheartedly with that statement. I mean, I'm looking at the statement that from the super chat, and I don't see either scenario happening. I mean, when you get to the trade deadline, if you're a seller, it just proves one thing: is your season has gone to shit, and now you're just trying to, stack draft capital, and you're already looking ahead to next season. If you're looking to be a buyer, it's like you're looking for that one or two more pieces that truly put you over the top. But I mean, gun to my head, if I had to pick either one of them, like both of you said, I think it was you first, Jeremy, I would move from John Franklin Myers. And the reason is the Jets have an embarrassment of riches at the position. As far as Corey Davis goes, why would you take a weapon away from Aaron Rodgers and hurt the offense, from where it's at? And furthermore, Davis is entering year 3 with the Jets. He's been a vocal leader in that wide receiver room. And you know what I mean? It's just like, why would you disturb that chemistry that he's already going to have with the wide receiver room and with your quarterback that you're bringing in?
At the same time, though, I'll push back on that in the sense of, JFM, if you move him, are you okay with Clemens being essentially the full-time starter there? And I don't think Clemens has the same pass rushing arsenal that JFM does. I don't think he works as well next to Quinnen as JFM does. And it's also, I'm not just moving off JFM because, we have too much depth at defensive line, right? If you have an injury or two, all of a sudden, your depth that you have, that's not depth anymore. Now you're at a weakness. Now, if you lose a guy like Clemens, who are you playing on interior? Are you having to move a guy that you were playing on the edge there, and now you're not getting as much out of him? It's just, I'm personally very adamant on keeping as many, as many defensive linemen on this roster as possible and as many good defensive linemen as possible. I'm not a fan of moving off someone just because, we have depth, because that has been something this organization has done before, and it has hurt them time and time again. It's just not something I'd want them to do, to be completely honest.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't want to lose either guy. I mean, like my point was, it would have to be a real big prize we were getting. Like if we were to move off at either of them, it would have to be for a very good reason, because again, it would have to make the team better. So what would it take? If you trade one of these guys, what are we looking at in return that makes the team better right now? Because our chips are in the middle of the table right now. I would think that though, and I don't know how you feel about this. I kind of feel it wouldn't be Clemens. I kind of feel like if we did move JFM, it would be with Jermaine Johnson. And I'm just talking from skill set wise, because Jermaine Johnson is probably after JFM the best edge setter on the team as far as sealing the edge. So I would imagine that it's more like JFM, Jermaine Johnson. I don't know, but but JFM has that ability to move to the inside, stunt to the inside. You could use him behind Jefferson. Like I'd rather have JFM in the middle next to Quinnen than Solomon Thomas, for example.
I also like for me, and once again, personal preference. I've really enjoyed JFM, not JFM, JJ being more of a stand-up guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like you put him in that quote unquote JFM. That's a lot more hand in the dirt. That's a lot more over the tackle instead of outside the tackle. And I just like Jermaine Johnson's versatility better if he's able to use his full array of moves from more of a wide 9, as in like being outside of the tackle instead of being head up. Whereas I like JFM as more of like a bigger guy that you feel more comfortable moving inside, but you're playing at a quote unquote edge defensive end where he has more versatility, but he's not as wide as, guys like a Bryce Huff, a Jermaine Johnson, a Will McDonald.
It's kind of sick when you say it, like for him standing up on the outside, because that, and he does look amazing this year at that. Like it's kind of like his conversion, because as a rookie, he was so good. Chasing down Josh Allen, and all these things that he did and brought. And this year it looks like he is going to be more of a pass rusher. But when you think of Bryce Huff and JFM and Will McDonald and Carl Lawson, we have 4 guys that are just sick, like that could play wide and just create complete havoc. It's absolutely just mind-boggling. But again, I'll say just, as the main point that I think all 3 of us agree on is we expect both of these guys to be on the starting roster anyway. And again, it would have to be, I think it would have to be a really strong reason, and there'd have to be very strong justification to move either of these guys. I just think because they're both, it's hard to convince me like who you getting that gives you the best chance to win this year, that's going to be on the 53. And there are guys out there, so it could happen, but I would hate to see either of them go. I'll just leave it at that. Because I think if he does get used, like if Lazard was to get hurt and you brought Corey Davis in, I still believe in a lot in his ability, to make big plays and to be, especially with Garrett Wilson taking most of the attention.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I see McCole Hardman is as a really great gadget. Going to replace Elijah Moore and Berrios, like the guy that does the sweeps, the guy that comes in and just does whatever kind of trick plays, but also he's not a bad just flat out receiver, especially to just go deep, keep the defense honest. Like if they start pulling in too much, Hardman will get past them and he's gone. So. Really exciting stuff, though, right? To have these conversations. I mean, as Jet fans, when's the last time we were this deep to even have conversations about depth and who's the better guy? And like, it's just sick to me. It's just
probably
sick.
The Rex years.
Yeah, it's been a very long time.
Yeah. I mean, for football, that's an eternity. Like for an old guy like me, it doesn't feel that long ago. But the reality is, 10 to 12 years is an eternity. So I mean, because you got like 14-year-old kids, his family is Jet fans. That kid does not know what it's like to be in the playoffs, to be a winning team. And I remember when I was 14, I didn't feel, I felt like I was alive a long time. So I can imagine what it's like, for younger fans that like have no memory of the good years and the years that we actually, were competitive. Let's see what Brian W has to say. Becton has about 80 million reasons to dominate this year. That is generational changing money for Makai. Yeah. I mean, I agree. And that's my concern about the long term. That's why I agree with the franchise tag after the season, because it's like that's when you truly get to know a player, is what are they going to do when they get those years of guaranteed money. But people, it is a point that should be mentioned. This is a contract year for Mekhi Becton. There's a lot of motivation for him to excel and play really well this year.
Yeah, 1,000%. I mean, it's something where you want to see the best version of Becton, and I think you're going to get him.
Yep, if Becton stays healthy, he's a special talent. By the way, this is Haider Ali, a great, great friend of mine and the channel. It's good to see your brother, and I hope your family as well, can become elite. Many in the NFL view him as such. I definitely could see. I think that we all in 2020 saw him as a guy that was going to be an elite left tackle. I mean, people will. I mean, he was there as a run blocker. I mean, he was elite as a run blocker. He was pancaking everybody. I think even as a pass blocker, didn't he have? He had good games, solid games against guys like Nick Bosa, didn't he?
Yeah, it was Joey Bosa in the Chargers game. Yeah, I mean, he wasn't perfect by any means, but he had those standout games. And in the run game, they were calling it Highway 77 because it would just be a path cleared out whenever he would be out and moving in the run game.
We have waited so long to see AVT and Becton together, and what to me is I love that It's amazing to me that it may have fell in this way, because 2 years ago it was supposed to be them both on the left side, and now we might end up seeing them on the right side. To me, what's the difference? As long as we get to see these two together, I just can't imagine what our running game could be. And if Tippmann wins that center position, I think he's much more effective as a run blocker, I think, than McGovern, in the sense of, from what I've seen. I know he hasn't played against the ones, or we haven't seen him much against the ones, but in just the way he moves people and controls the line of scrimmage. I see him turning guys. I see him moving guys. And imagine 3 guys in a row, AVT, Tippmann, and Becton, turning and moving guys. The potential, is just incredible.
It's very exciting to think about. And just like I said, health. Continuity, it goes a long way in this league. I know we had more combinations on this offensive line than any other team in the National Football League last year. Your best 5 should carry you out throughout the season. I mean, let me ask you, who do you guys think are the starting 5? Monday Night Football, 9/11 versus Buffalo.
I'm rooting for Tippmann.
So starting 5, I mean, I think left tackle is Dwayne. I think left guard is Lakin. Center is the one where I'm tossed up. I've been leaning McGovern because I think as a veteran with Aaron Rodgers at quarterback, I don't know if right off the bat they want a rookie snapping to him. I think as the season goes on, it's going to be more and more evident that they should get Tippmann in there at center, but I don't think it's going to be like that right off the bat. And then I want Vera Tucker back then to round out that starting 5 along the offensive line. I personally think that's a good unit. I think that's a very good unit that once they mesh together is going to keep Rodgers upright. But at the end of the day, it's about health and those guys meshing together.
Now, Brendan, we have a question from Twisted, who's celebrating 9 months as a member. A woman could have gotten pregnant and had a baby. That's how long Twisted has been a member of this channel. I think, did you go to the game with your dad yesterday?
Yes.
Oh, okay, great. So one thing he's asking is how the seats were, because he hasn't sat there yet. So I'm guessing he might have tickets there for maybe he has season tickets or something.
Oh yeah, I mean just the environment was great. It was a great view of the field, and I think as good as the environment was yesterday, they brought back the singing of the national anthem for the fans, and I'm very excited to see what that's going to be like on opening night. I think that's going to be a level of just pregame excitement that just hasn't been there at that level for Jets fans in a very, very long time. I know personally in my life, closest thing would probably be 2010, 2011.
I think you were going to lean towards the 9/11 Cowboys game.
Well, yeah, the 2011. That was the kickoff of the new stadium, I'm pretty sure, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
So honestly, that's probably the closest thing.
So also, Twisted, I want to remind you that if you're at the Monday Night Football game, November 6th against the Chargers, I'm sitting in that end zone. So I have tickets. I'm sitting in I don't know if it's the next section, but I'm sitting in that same end zone. So if you're there, Twisted, I guess I'll see you, which would be cool. But thanks for being a member of the channel, Twisted. And Twisted behind the scenes sends a lot of feedback via email, gives me a lot of information. So he knows I appreciate him very much. Let's see. Looks like a new name in Keith Scroff. Come on, everyone, support these guys and give a like. Well, thank you, Keith, and welcome to the channel. You may have been here before. Maybe you don't chat that often, but I didn't recognize your name so quick, so I wanted to highlight your chat. Let's see. It's nice to have actual good players as depth that we don't want to trade. Yeah, Dave. That's what I'm saying. It's weird because usually we have starters on our team that we don't like and we're not happy about. And now the people who used to start on our team are people who are fighting for roster spots. I mean, let's face it, in 2020, a third year Ashton Davis was pretty much a starting safety for us. Now, not to put him down because he's looked pretty good, but right now he's fighting for a roster spot. There was a day where he was a no-brainer. 2018, 2019, Ashton Davis is our starting, safety. So things have changed.
The thing that's crazy with the roster that Joe Douglas has built is, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think last year alone, the Jets castoffs that were cut off this team led the league in pickups from, the waiver wire from other teams around the league. You go back to those 2 years we had Gase, if you were cut off the New York Jets, it was safe to say your career was over because nobody wanted you.
Yeah. I do want to say I picked the wrong position. Safety, he would not have been a starting safety in 2018 or 2019 because we had Jamal and Marcus May.
He was part of that ugly 2020 draft
Yeah,
class.
he was a 2020 selection. So
okay. I meant like if he was a third year, if the Ashton Davis we have right now was there in 2019. But what I forgot about the fact that safety room was the only room that was good on those rosters. We actually had a pretty decent safety room with Jamal Adams and Marcus May. So Jason has a question for you. Do you have any relation to Bob, the Fox Motorsports guru?
That's got to be a first for me. Not to my knowledge, unless this is first time that I'm finding out something. No, I do not think I'm related to him.
Okay. Iowan chimes in. Hopefully Tippmann is spending this week working on his shotgun snaps. I would hope. I mean, I don't think they're as bad as people are making it out to be. I mean, I haven't seen him snap one 5 yards over a quarterback's head or anything. But, I mean, do you think realistically in practice that you think he goes out there and he takes like 100 a day? I mean, do you think this is a real thing?
I mean, center's one of those tricky positions. And not only do you have to learn, obviously snapping the ball, but the protections and firing your head up and the protections at the NFL level and all that different type of stuff. I wouldn't worry about Tippmann. That's something that can be fixed. I'm happier that the blocking and the actual production part isn't the quote unquote major issue. So I'm not overly concerned. I'm more concerned about his actual health, but he's shown a lot in the games that he's played, and I would not be too concerned there.
The thing is, with the way Jets Twitter is structured, the littlest error that's made in practice these days gets blown way out of proportion, and that could be a botched snap, a blown assignment, a dropped pass. It just, they're struggling at this position. No, they're not. It's 7-on-7s. They're in shoulder pads and T-shirts. It's not live time real games. I don't buy into that crap. I really don't.
So it's all about context. It's all about context.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because the whole offseason is practice. It's practice. And people seem to take it so seriously. And one of the things
They sent us into a panic when Rodgers just strained his calf a little bit, and then it's like the sky is falling. And I know we're not used to having good things here, but guys, calm down, take a chill pill. It's all right. We're gonna be fine.
Well, I mean, to me, the other thing about where I think people are too judgmental about things that happen in practice is, I think that, and I think Braden alluded to this earlier, this is the time of year where you're trying new things. So just because in a scrimmage it says, "Oh, that was awful, 8 incomplete passes," or "This player was doing this and looked awful," you don't know that player at 100% of what they may have been working on one specific thing. Like this wide receiver may have been working on something, their worst part of their game, and just constantly working on that one thing. And it looks bad to us in the crowd, but their 80%, 90% of their game doesn't exist. They're not doing what they feel comfortable doing, and there's no reflection of what the real game or what their real play is. But this is their opportunity to work on things. And a lot of people work on things that they struggle with. People might be trying a new stance. We have kids coming out of college, kids coming from other teams that don't know the system. It's their first time zone blocking. I mean, like all these things that people don't understand. What do you think, Braden? Is there truth to that? Do you agree with that? That in that practice, it's really hard sometimes to get a reflection of how much somebody's struggling?
I'm going to say something, and in today's day and age, it's not always looked upon the best, but it's all about nuance for me. So, essentially, on one hand, there are certain things where you look at where you can basically say right off the bat that's a good or bad thing. And it's all about the context, a certain play. If a tackle is continuously getting beat in practice, yes, that is a very bad thing. But on the other hand, offensive struggles. Are you going to say a season is over because a team can't move the ball in training camp practice, move the ball, period? No. Why is that? Well, we don't know how that team is reflected with their defense. Is that defense just insane? Or is the offense actually bad? You don't know until you actually get consistent live game action. You don't know because some starters might not be in. You don't know what the install looks like. You don't know, like you said, if certain things are being worked on. So whenever I look at different things, and this is the way I've approached training camp stuff, I focus more, and once again, I said this earlier, and I'll bring it back up again, individual over overall until we get into the season. Because I'd rather focus on how the offense looks on a day-to-day basis rather than looking at the overall, unless it becomes a pattern. If the offense was struggling every single day and not being able to move the ball at all every single day, I'd be a little concerned. It'd be like, okay, maybe this Aaron Rodgers-led offense isn't looking as good as it should. But that's not the case. There's good days. There's bad days. There's days where Rodgers is hitting every pass. There's days where the defense is getting in his face. Guess what? That's football. The offense isn't going to win 100% of the time. And for one team, both units, you want them to have days that they win the day. That's good. Yep. You look at different install periods with, how does the offensive line look in this session as opposed to that session? Run down the list of an entire roster and you look at the different things, it all adds up towards what you should be expecting. And at the end of the day, no matter what it is, you shouldn't put all your eggs in the basket of preseason, of training camp, of practice, because at the end of the day, it's just that. It's preseason, it's training camp, it's practice. How many times have we seen guys look amazing in training camp, amazing in the preseason, and then absolutely terrible in the regular season because it's a different game speed? It's all about what you take out of it and not completely overreacting to this thing or not putting enough stock into that thing. It's about staying basically level, staying basically flowing and not getting too high, getting too low. That's a sports saying, but it's true because you get too high, you're avoiding the potential negatives. You get too low, you're avoiding the potential positives. And you don't want that to be the case. You got to look at it with a mind frame of, we're not going to fully know until the live game action actually happens. And then you look back and you're like, okay, maybe this thing actually was a legit thing, or hey, the struggles here didn't mean the thing. It's a very long and drawn out answer, but that's kind of my thoughts on it, in the sense of I don't really just, put 100% stock into it, but I also don't think it's completely meaningless.
That makes total sense.
Agreed.
Sense. Weed the People. When's my next live call-in show? Man, I've got to schedule one where it's consistent. Maybe I'll do one tomorrow. Weed the People. Weed the People loves to come on. I could barely see him behind all the smoke, but I will. I'll try to see if I could do one tomorrow. I forget that some of you like that call-in stuff. So stay tuned. That's why you got to hit the notification bell, people. When you subscribe to the channel, hit that little bell, because sometimes I don't always, and Larry Twisted will tell you that sometimes I don't always give warning. You never know when I might pop into a live show. So, but thanks for the super chat, Weed the People. We appreciate that here. And see who else is here. Furious Grim is here. I haven't seen you tonight. What's going on, man? You hate when people are talking again of Corey Davis. I'm not a big fan of it either. I happen to be. I'm a secret closet Corey Davis liker. I like Corey Davis, even with the drops. I mean, if people are hating Corey Davis because of the drop passes, you're not gonna like Lazard. So brace yourselves. Some guys, some people are just different from each other. Like Lazard will drop some easy passes, but he's going to make some amazing big plays for us. So, you have to balance it out. Cy Thompson says next week we'll start to tell the tale of the season. Let's go Jets. I don't know. I mean, it'll tell some tales of the season, but not all of them. Yeah, because we're only going to see maybe 2 drives with Aaron Rodgers. What do you think? What do you think, Brandon?
I'm seeing it now. There's going to be a good drive, and people are going to react one way, or there's going to be a bad drive and people are going to be like, the season's over. We can't do anything. And I'm just going to be like, relax. Whether it's good or bad, it doesn't really mean too much. It just means, hey, the script for that game worked. We executed that script. Simple as that. And that's the other thing that goes into a lot of this preseason stuff. Teams aren't emptying the playbook. Teams aren't actually going to empty what they're going to do in the red zone, what they're going to do in a 4-minute offense, a 2-minute drill, because that'd be stupid to give other teams film on what you're actually going to do. And that's the other thing. Like, great example of this, right? Last night, Zach Wilson has the insane run where he looks like the player that was coming out of BYU, right? And then the Jets go handoff, and screen pass, right? On the one hand, wanted them to push the ball down the field more. Yet, I kind of understand, because you don't want to really show what those types of plays are going to be in that area of the field. Once again, it's all nuanced, and you don't want to react too much either way of how something goes. But you absolutely want Aaron Rodgers to be playing well in his first game action, because that's the only game action with the Jets are going off of. So I get it both ways, but I just encourage people, please do not overreact. It is the preseason. We can start reacting one way or the other when it comes to the regular season.
You could say it all you want, Brandon. You know it's going to happen, though.
I know it's going to happen, but I'm putting it out there.
I know. We appreciate that, but, remember, we're not used to having nice things here. And I could give you 2 scenarios where they're going to say, oh, the trade was a bust. We got hosed. Just the guy. Can you imagine his first drive? Here's the common one. God forbid we go 3-and-out. God forbid. Well, they can't move the ball with Aaron Rodgers. Or even worse, if he throws an interception against the Giants.
Well, you're going to have people trolling on the internet. They're just going to rile up those Jets fans anyway. And then you're going to have said Jets fans riling up other Jets fans, because it's a
long season, guys. That's all I'm going to keep saying. It's a very long season.
That it is. I do want to say that it's interesting you brought that up. I saw some people, Zach Wilson, he can't score a touchdown. He brings him down. Well, look what happened. He ran for 30 yards, 33 yards. He makes a great play. And you're right. The next play was screen pass, run, screen pass.
They took it out of his hands.
Right.
They took it out of his hands.
They literally took the ball out of his hands. There was nothing that he executed the screen passes fine. He did nothing wrong. He did the exact play he was told to run, and people are blaming him. Well, he didn't have an opportunity. You know why? It's just what Brandon just said. It's the best point I've heard, like this whole off season and this whole training camp. Why would you give away the information? Why would you show people your tendencies, what you would do after a big play when you get to the other team's 20-yard line? Why would you give away that? Why would you give them that tape? It makes no sense. So what do? You give a couple of screen passes, you do a running play, because you're just practicing reps. That's all you're really doing. That's the whole point of a preseason game. It would make no sense to try any of the plays that you're doing in practice when there are no fans there, when there are no cameras there. It makes 100% sense. I want to just say hello to a good friend of the show and of mine, Project Prospect with Dom C. Dom C, great show, guys. I'm going to add my 2 cents. A, if Becton playing right tackle with the ones this week, a huge sign that RT home may be filled. B, love Trey Dean. I don't see any way he bumps Ashton off the 53. Well, I don't see a way he bumps Ashton. Well, Brandon was actually addressing that, Dom. He was saying is sometimes you have to look at other positions in other areas where you can make room on the roster. So
well, with Trey Dino, I think what helped in his favor last night was the extended playing time. I know he finished as the leading tackler for the team last night. He had about 8 tackles, but I think what also helps in Ashton Davis's favor is his draft pedigree. And, usually, not all the time, but most of the time, I mean, a 3rd-round draft pick that might end up saving him his roster spot in the end.
I also think with Trey Dean versus Ashton Davis, it's who's the better special teamer. Davis has done the special teams every single year he's been here. They really enjoy him in that regard, evidently. And yes, the draft pedigree has a huge play in it. Joe Douglas drafted him as a part of that 2020 draft class. He made some nice tackles, and it looked like he was taking better angles. Maybe he's starting to develop. I highly doubt it. Personally, I'd rather have Trey Dean on the roster. I feel like he's a heat-seeking missile as a tackler, and I think he'd be a great addition to that Jets safety room. But once again, it's a wait and see. We will have to see what happens.
I mean, look, you might have – I'm hoping, knock on wood, the injury to Tippmann is not serious. I haven't heard anything, but some people were saying that it's not. I don't know if either of you have heard anything about Tippmann.
All I heard is they're calling it a thigh injury. That's it.
For Tippmann?
For Tippmann.
Well, I'm not talking about Izzy. I'm talking about Tippmann.
Oh, I'm getting,
Izzy was the thigh injury.
No, Izzy was the thigh. I apologize. Right. Tippmann was a knee, but, Saleh didn't want to address it in the press conference, which that's what makes that concerning.
So my point is, if let's say you have to, and knock on wood, I hope it doesn't happen, you have to start Tippmann on the PUP list or the IR or whatever it is, right? Maybe that's Trey Dean's spot. Right.
Right. Yeah.
It's have a backup center already, and the other guy, or Schweitzer or whatever his name is. So it's not that we have to find a replacement backup center. So maybe you go with one less offensive lineman for the first 6 games, and then by week 7, you have to assume there's going to be some other injuries because that's just the NFL, and you could probably get away with having the extra safety on the roster. I'm just saying, isn't that the way it works sometimes?
Yeah, 100%. And that Tippmann spot, which I hope that's not the case, but that could be a wide receiver 6 or another linebacker or Trey Dean spot while also keeping an Ashton Davis. And you got to remember, there's the practice squad too. You have those injuries who elevate guys from the practice squad. You get the elevations every week during the season now. So all that roster construction stuff goes into that too, what they want to do specific game weeks as opposed to other game weeks.
Yeah. Now, to answer Rocket Rod's question, the offensive line, it looks like as long as he makes the roster, Turner is going to be that experienced guy that can come in at tackle with experience. Max Mitchell has a year of experience now. He has playing experience to come in an offensive line. Turner has years of experience and experience working with A-Rod. On the defensive line, I'm not worried about it at all because of the depth of the defensive line. I mean, Jefferson, Al Woods, Solomon Thomas, I mean, nothing but veterans. And then on edge, you got Carl Lawson, who's experienced. You got JFM, who's a veteran, who's experienced. And then you got the younger guys like Jermaine Johnson and McDonald and Clemens. I mean, we're just stacked. So I think that we're very deep in the trenches, I think, on both sides of the ball as far as experience and players with, and players. I think the only question mark and the tension is the quality of the offensive line depth based on the fact that we have a almost 40-year-old guy who just coming off shoulder surgery, and we have another guy on the other side who just missed 2 years because of a knee injury. I think that's where the concern is. The concern of not that Turner doesn't have experience, but do we really want Turner to have to be the tackle for 10 weeks in a row? I mean, that's the thing I think most Jet fans fear. Would you guys agree with that?
I mean, I wouldn't worry at all about the depth on the defensive line right now. I think, God forbid, you get 2-3 injuries. That's when I'm starting to be like, okay, now I would start looking into depth there. You didn't even mention Al Woods, Quinn Jefferson. Like, those guys had roles last night. Jefferson had a sick play in the run game. And to the offensive line point, unless options come available, it kind of is what it is right now. Like, I'm not a fan of the depth currently, but Mekhi Becton becomes a starter, I feel a little bit better because Billy Turner looks a lot better as a depth option than your starting right tackle. He looks a lot better as a swing tackle than a starting left tackle. So
certainly better than Connor McDermott.
Yes.
Connor McDermott.
I mean, look, that's what we're talking about. That's where we're coming from, right? So, I mean,
I couldn't get we cut the guy. The Patriots couldn't wait to scoop him up.
So Nathan Colgrove, what was the latest on Justin Tippmann? So we don't know. I don't think. Right? I mean, I heard from one person that they don't think it's serious. That was all I heard, that they don't think it's serious. But I don't know where their source is. I don't know. To me, I am not going to speculate until I hear Robert Saleh's press conference tomorrow.
Yeah, you're gonna see tomorrow. I wouldn't even try to speculate on any of the injuries until you actually have, the head coach coming out and giving confirmation one way or the other. So I personally wouldn't let speculation run rampant on that.
Right. I mean, it's not like there was a big deal and there were crowds of people in a cart carting him out or anything like that. So, I mean, let's just hope for the best. I mean, obviously, we don't want Tippmann to miss any time. I'm really excited about the kid, whether he's going to start on opening day or not. I don't want him to be hurt. I want him to get all his reps in and be ready to go. Obviously, I think that's how we all feel. As Jet fans, we never want anybody to be hurt. And that's that. Well, guys, it's been a great show. Brandon, I want to offer you the floor to tell people about where to find your articles, anything else you want to promote or tell people about.
Yeah, so obviously I'm on Twitter at BPOC24. You guys can find me there. I post all my articles there, tweeting about the Jets there. Writing for, as mentioned at the top of the show, Jets X Factor. Make sure to just check out that site in general, guys. Really great site. Lots of great work going on. A lot of people way smarter than me. They do a phenomenal job. And if you want Jets content, that's like Jets written content. In my eyes, that's the place to be. I've done some Mets writing. You could find that if that gets posted. I have a Knicks podcast for Let's Talk Knicks. So that has been getting posted. So if you guys are interested in that, you guys can check it out. And otherwise, I had a blast and honestly looking forward to doing this again. Had a great time tonight, guys.
Yeah,
Brandon,
I'll tell you.
Coming on. Go ahead, Jeremy. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, Brendan, we'll definitely have you back if you're willing. I'm glad you said that because you're definitely going to be welcome back. Love to check in throughout the season and get your takes about how things are going. So we'll definitely stay in touch. You're a great guest tonight. I really appreciate it. Really made for a great show. So we appreciate you. I can tell the viewers through the comments are appreciating you. So welcome to the channel and welcome to our community.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Vinny C. Vinny C, anything you got going on or you want to say? Or
no, that was excellent. I mean, Brandon, I wanted to put out there. I know this is our first time actually speaking face to face, but I've been a fan of your content for a very, very long time. Please don't ever stop. Like while we were working from home, like especially during the COVID time or whatnot, you made life so much easier. While the house is silent and you're just typing away.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
That's fantastic. I want to thank you, everybody in the chat. Make sure you check out Brandon's articles. Obviously, very intelligent, very well informed. I'm looking forward to reading more of him and look forward to seeing everybody. I might be back tomorrow night for a call-in show, but I'll definitely be back on Wednesday night at 8 p.m. For the Pride and Chaos show. And I'll leave you all with this. Don't not be Thibodeau. And here it comes. It's about to come in. Oh my God. They didn't. They took Sauce Gardner. Oh my God, they don't want an edge. Maybe he likes Jermaine Johnson at 10. Then we're not going to get a wide receiver? Garrett Wilson, wide receiver. Oh my God, no edge.
Was sitting there.
The Jets traded up. The Jets traded up. Are we taking JJ? Are we taking JJ? Because I know Braden is in New Zealand saying, we should get Lily, Mike. He's definitely saying that. JJ! We got Johnson! We got Johnson at 26! We got Johnson at 26! This is great! Yes! They took Roger McCreary, they didn't take Dean, and we traded up. We can get to Kobe Dean. We can get to Kobe Dean. It really is. They took Breece Hall. They took Breece Hall. Wow. I mean, look, I love Breece Hall. But there's also Jeremy Ruckert, who I think is the best tight end in the class personally. They took Jeremy Ruckert. They took Jeremy Ruckert. Yes! We got a Jeremy. We got a Jeremy. Oh, and the Jets pick, and it's Max Mitchell, offensive tackle. We needed that. That's wow. We took Michael Clemens. I never heard of him. A defensive edge.